Well, she was a great shouter. We went to the Midtown Church one night, and Thad Watson was a preacher, and he could really preach the old-time Bible. And Ma shouted. She couldn't go much, but that time it had to walk about 8 miles. But that time she went down the creek and up to the Bradleytown Church at night. I think he went with her. I don't know. But I was there. And I was looking through the window. Now, I was just a boy like others. I didn't go in much. Yeah, I was outside. I saw her shouting. Buddy, I ain't never seen nothing like that. Well, they slap their hand. They jump up and down, and they look up all the time. As happy as they can be. Well, you can't understand them hardly. They're talking out of this world, I call it. Well, they went on back home after that. Ma never did talk much. She just had lots to think about, and she kept thinking it all and kept it all going along very well. Her part of it went along fine. She made all our clothes. He would do what she told him to, buy the stuff. We had the money. And we raised sheep and sheared them, took the wool to Whittier, and both jeans cloth made our clothes. Sewed everything with her fingers. It was red, gray and red looking. Now, that's all the clothes we had. What she made our coats with the pattern she'd borrowed somewhere, some other person. We lived sometimes 20 miles away from people, you know, different, and sometimes pretty close, but usually a long ways off. But somehow they contacted each other. Somehow they done it. A coat and a pant. Yeah. And underwear was made out of plain factory cloth. Women, girls, and everything. Yeah. There was no fancy panties then. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. If you want to hear that one. For no one. Yeah, how she lived, and what she done, and I know I was there the first one. And how the men was with her and all that, but they never bothered her. We had men. There was men loggers and all that kind of rough. Mm-hmm. Mean as the devil. I know that. I remember. They never bothered her. I've never found a woman yet in my circulation bolding and staying everywhere like that. Now watch it. Know what to do pretty well.
It was strong will.
Mm-hmm. It was a will to do the right thing to all humans. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was born in her to do that, I reckon. Well, that's when I left there. Come to where I said, the Loftus place on Mingus Creek, and at that time, when I lived at the Loftus place, me and my mother took a trip to Whittier to get some medicine for one of the kids. Paul was so busy he didn't have time. Well, I was the first one, and I was, it must have been 7 at that time. I was 6 at that time. That's right, I was 6 years old at that time. And they was Edna and Emma. Joe, Edna, and Emma at that time. And now, as I said, we started on a trip to Whittier to walk down the rough, muddy, rocky road. And I remember there was a gang of sheep down there belonging to Mr. Dowdle. My mother loved to tease. And sheep was friendly with her, and they come up to her and lick her hands. And I was back. I wouldn't come up. And she got me up where the sheep was, and he licked my hand. It scared me to death. It was about 8 at that time. That's after I left the Dowdle place. About 8 years old at that time. Well, now we walked to Whittier and got the medicine from Dr. Reeves. Used to be at Canton after that, years after that. He must be dead now. But we walked back then. We got to Cherokee. We come through the Neck Bottom and around by Shoal Creek, Birdtown, and got to Cherokee. There was only one store there then, Mac Jenkins. To the right of the road coming into the river, coming down that way from Birdtown. We went in the store, and Ma, she asked me what to eat, and I told her it didn't matter, whatever she wanted. And she got a little money, and she had sold eggs and bought. She got a can of peaches, one of them big ones, cost 15 cents. I remember today. and we bought a chunk of cheese, big a quarter than that, for a quarter back here now. Well, we eat that under a big sycamore tree, and I've always tried to find the tree as I went through there with you, I think. It wasn't there. It's all gone. Everything's different than what it was. And only landmark that is there, where close to where we eat, is them postes, cement postes, was there at the first beginning of Cherokee. Yeller Hill, they called it, that time. Must have been 100 years ago that happened, that started. Well, we went on back home from there up to Loftus Place where we live. There's a little story right here I'll tell, my mother witnessed. Haynes Queen used to be a preacher. He was one of the prominent families on the river. There was a few. Wealthy, pretty wealthy at that time, not much, but they called him wealthy. And he was one of them. He used to be a preacher. Now you can think this over as I go along and see what happens. And let you own be your own judge. Well, he was hauling lumber with, he had fine mules, rolling fat and sassy, you know. He worked three. Worked the one in the front. Spike team, they call it. He loaded a big load of lumber on a wagon and got stuck in the creek right at our bars. Now he was a preacher, but he come at beating the mules with a whip he had, and a mule's skin, a horse's skin is tender. Bull's skin don't matter. He can't feel them. It scares him a little. But horse's skin are tender, and them mules are the regular raising cane. And Ma went down to the bars and told Mr. Queen, she said, "Don't you know that it ain't good to be doing that?" He stopped. He said, "Well, quit." She said, "Now you get out of the wagon and go up to them mules' heads, pat them a little bit, let them rest, and they'll put it out." Well, he done that. He got back up in there and they went around out. Well, now here's what happened later, the sad part of it. Well, where that happened, I do not know. He went on to Whittier with his load of lumber that same day, and he was coming back through Shoal Creek empty. And the mules were still alert for that beating they'd got, remember. Well, he hoped to get a drink at the spring. I know exactly where the spring was. There was up beside the road. Oh, got off there many times. And while that was going on, while he was drinking water, them mules got scared. There was something happened. We never did know what. But they started rearing, you know. I believe he tied them ropes to his feet thinking he would hold them mules. How ignorant a man can get. He didn't know the power of them mules when they got mad, scared. But he had never thought of it, had he? Something. Well, I always believe the Indians stopped them. They run 3 miles with him by the feet over them rocks, dragging him. He still lived a little while. They took fence rails. They was playing ball. They grabbed fence rails. They know what to do. Them old Indians did. The only way to stop them. And they were flying, them mules was. After they'd run 3 miles, they were fixing to go through the ford there at Nick Bottom River. And they stuck them rails in the ground and helped them stop them mules with them.
Into the wheels?
Yeah. And they stuck them rails right down in the ground and held them with them mules, and they run into them. Yeah. I don't know what they done to the mules, not much, but enough to stop.
Yeah.
Stuck them in them. Stop them no other way. Well, they got him up, took him on, brought him home. Ma went down there that night, and she asked me if she said she wanted me to go with her. The fall where he was beat so bad in there, working out his mouth, he done died. But he lived long enough to get home. Didn't say nothing for it. Well, we do nothing. We just have our own ways of living, and that was working a little, cutting wood, or the man of the house, if he made a good living, Paul made it pretty good, better than the rest of them, I think. We gotta look back on it. There's always something to do, buddy. You didn't have to lay your time much, just on Sunday maybe. Yeah, and we would long for I would, he didn't know it, but I would long for a rainy spell to come, so I'd go all the other time. We had corn to hoe and taters and garden and everything, yeah. cattle. We had sheep and cattle and hogs and all that stuff. No, there wasn't no plenty up in there. Not in them lives. Well, sometimes they whittle. The old man would get out on Sunday and whittle. They wouldn't. If they went down to a town like Whittier somewhere, they had big old tubs. They spit their amber in, whittled along, yeah, and gas and blow off. And I think they had that whiskey too. They had a little of it sometimes, every once in a while. No, Paul was always out. He never fooled with whiskey. He didn't sit with them barrels and talk as much. He's busy all the time. Or, had no food. That man never had no food. Well, we walk in the woods a lot of times. In the fall of the year, we'd go hunt chestnuts. Yeah. That wasn't working. Well, my daddy learned me how to catch a fish. The mountain trout, the speckled trout, the original, not very many. You have to go way back to get them. Way back is rough. You got to have the goods. You got to be able to walk and stand the rough stuff. But they're still up there. And he catch them with a little hook. He would buy. There wasn't many hooks like everything else. He bought these little hooks, and they was crooked. They had to be crooked. Most of them crooked, but them had to be speckled to hold them fish. And he used the red worms. They call them bloodworms. Red worms. Dig them before he started out of the ground. And he says now, when they first started to learn me to do that on Bryson Branch on Collins Creek, out where the Panther got us, he said, before you start doing this, you got to get your mind set and be steady and be ready before that fish bites. I was just a boy. I didn't understand it much, but I got on to it pretty quick. Yeah, you be ready before the fish bites. You just be ready, buddy, and when he gets it, you got to get it too. So he bites and gone. He don't fool it. Just anywhere along the creek where there's a big enough pool for a fish to be in. Little pool sometimes, maybe just 3 or 4 feet wide. There's fish in there. We use red worms all the time. We didn't use no fly hooks. Some people use fly hooks, I think, but we always use a real old sinker hook with a little lead on the line to sink it a little bit. No, we always take them home most of the time if we didn't have a frying pan with us. Put them on a string, and every time we pass the water, we dip them in the water. You string them on a wooden stick. There's a little fork on the bottom of it, so they can't slip off. Stick them right down on it. I had 100 sometimes more than I could hardly carry them. The last ones I done was up on Chastain Dragon Prong, the last fish I ever made.